Big hello out to everyone and welcome to today's session on how to get involved in technology development at EWB. I'd like to start by first acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which I'm meeting. You'll be meeting on different lands, but for me, I'm meeting on the Trungurung and Wurundjeri people up in country Victoria. So we pay our respects to their rich cultures and to their elders past, present and emerging. The purpose of today's session is, as you may well know, is to give you all a bit of an update. So update our network on where things are at Engineers Without Borders in this technology development space. So it's a chance for us to advertise our current volunteer opportunities that we'd love you to get involved in. And this is at the time for sort of the start of National Volunteer Week, which is actually an annual celebration to acknowledge the generous contribution of our volunteers at EWB, but also not-for-profits around the country are doing the same. The theme of National Volunteer Week is changing communities and changing lives. And I think that's something that our volunteers at EWB can truly attest to and speak to really well. Bit of a hello from the panelists as well. So joining me, my name's Beatrix. I work in the training programs team at EWB. And I'm sort of the host or MC, I suppose, of today's webinar. And joining me, we have Sam, who's our Head of Education, Research and Tech Development at EWB. Gosh, Sam, that's a bit of a mouthful. So big hello to you. And we also have Andy. Andy Drain is our Technology Development Lead at EWB Australia. And we also have Shenuka, who's our Mobilisation Officer. So yeah, we're blessed to be joined by the three of you today and look forward to you all sharing with us in just a moment. So how is today going to work? Just after my welcome of you all, we're going to go through a bit of a technology development overview with Sam. So Sam's going to share with us some of the achievements of the tech dev team so far and just give you a bit of an overview of that project area and what it's all about. We're then going into the technology development project flyover. So Andy's going to give us a pretty short, sharp introduction to some of the really exciting projects that we have in the works at EWB. Then we get to hear from Shenuka, who's going to talk a bit about mobilisation at Engineers Without Borders. And that's really the piece that will show you how you can actually get involved with some of these projects and what role our volunteers can play. All right, so I think that's about it for me in terms of welcoming and settling you all in. I might throw it over to Sam to start us off with a bit of an overview of technology development at EWB.
Thanks a lot, Trixie, and hi everybody. Fantastic to be here with you today, and thanks for showing up in such great numbers. It's fantastic to see such a great response to this session, particularly given that it is being held in National Volunteers Week. So technology development is something that's not particularly new for Engineers Without Borders Australia. As an organisation, we've been working within this space for since we started. What has changed, I think, in the last year to a year and a half is that the organisation's decided to take more of a particular focus, not on the role we play in technology development, but in thinking through specifically how we want to go about doing that and doing that consistently. And so a bit over a year ago, EWB decided to initiate its technology development department. And the objective of that department or that area of work was really to look at being able to consistently design, develop and implement technology solutions, but not just any technology solutions that meet the self-identified need and aspirations of communities around the world, but with a particular focus on the Asia Pacific region and in Australia. And one of the primary objectives, and I think this is kind of really at the core of what we're trying to do, is to develop equitable, sustainable, and potentially scalable technologies. Now, for that to be impactful, those technologies can't just stand alone. And so, although there is a focus on the development of the technologies themselves, there's a huge complementary factor that plays a role here, which is looking at the enabling environments that these technologies require to have impact and to be able to sustain that impact over an extended period of time, which is where this increased focus on technology also plays an incredibly complementary role, and vice versa, to the incredible work that we've been doing in our community programs team over the last 10 to 15 years. That's led us on a really interesting journey as an organization. So Andy and myself have been working specifically in this space for just over a year. And one of the biggest achievements that Andy's led throughout the last year is the development of what we're now calling the technology development approach at EWB Australia. What this really does is it pulls on literature, the ways that EWB has worked historically, and the experiences of not only Andy, myself, the rest of the team at EWB Australia, but also throughout our networks, to pull together this approach that can hopefully be applied consistently to be able to achieve our goal. And what it really does is it looks at this interesting nexus point between traditional engineering practice and design, participatory design approaches like human-centered design, and other areas that are critical to community development and social sciences. And it packages that up into a concise but also very thorough approach to the way engineering can be applied in this space. That's something that, for those of you who are interested in engaging in our volunteer projects that we'll be discussing later, you'll have an opportunity to be exposed to the technology development approach and also interact with it at different phases of the design process that we've framed and that we run projects through. I think that's, talking about achievements, Trixie, I think that's a huge achievement that we've managed to produce as an organization. And certainly the feedback we've received on that suggests that it's a fairly unique contribution to this space, although it unto itself draws on the knowledge and experience from a range of different fields, organizations, and individuals. Another achievement that I'd like to highlight is the fact that I think through our focus on technology development and the partnerships and the projects that we've been able to run within EWB, I think one of the biggest achievements is actually the focus of this conversation and the overlaps between the technology development department and EWB's mobilisation space, and the fact that we've been able to not only present opportunities for volunteers to engage with real live projects that we're working on with communities in the Asia Pacific and on country in Australia, but that we've been able to, for want of a better word, extract really meaningful value from those volunteers, and that they've really contributed to the work that we're doing and the impact that we're trying to achieve as an organisation. And I know that's not unfamiliar territory for EWB, but it's certainly, I think, in the last 12 months, we've seen some really important steps forward in that space. And it sets a really interesting foundation for that space to grow as we as an organisation move into our new strategy, beyond the 2020 strategy that we're currently working towards. Andy, I mean, you've been based in the field in Cambodia for most of the last year. Would you like to share any of the major sort of achievements or highlights that you've seen from within the tech dev space over that time?
Sure, it's a beautifully smooth transition. Yeah, so I was going to fly through a few of the projects that we've been working on in the field. So if I just share my screen and bring that up, I'll just talk through a few of the projects that we've been working on. This is going to be a real flyby, like Trixie said earlier, but the hope is we can give a little bit of a taste for the types of project, the skill sets that are involved in the projects that we work on. And then we can have lots of follow-up conversations going forward from that. So I've been based in the Phnom Penh office in Cambodia for the past year. And a lot of the work we've been doing has been around disability inclusion and mobility. And that's because we have a number of strong partners in that space. And that's really where there seems to be a growing need for technology support. So one of the projects we've been delivering is called the Agrilab. So this is a co-design project, a participatory design project where we work with, at the moment, with 2 different communities to scope projects and actually co-design relatively simple, low-cost solutions that help with disability access to agricultural livelihoods. This project really involves a lot of working in the field, kind of hands-on back and forth workshops and prototyping and project scoping and field testing, supported by one of our field volunteers, Angus Mitchell, who has been based in Cambodia as well, but is now also currently in Australia. And so from the Agrilab, this really gives us a good starting point. So we know that this idea is really cool. We know that community like it, and it really satisfies the particular needs of that community. And then we can do some experimentation and testing, and then from there look to head into more detailed design and longer term scaling. So one of the designs that came out of Agrilab this year is the VPAM, so the vertical power assist module, or the PAM. This is really an add-on to some kind of wooden transport cart for use in rural Cambodia. What it aims to do is really create easy transport, motorized transport at a really low price point compared to buying a moped or a large tractor that might cost $500 to $3,000. This is around the $100 mark, using electric motors and a lot of the different components that you can actually find in your own community. So the idea being, the community may already have a wooden cart and access to a bicycle frame. And what we've been developing with community is this front end module that actually provides driven power to assist with short to medium distances. A similar project sitting within the Agrilab is also the water pump cart. So the water pump cart is actually for assisting with walking transport of water. So it's quite common for the communities we work with to carry buckets to and from a water source. So that could be a well or a stream or a river, or use a walking cart to carry that. But one of the challenges that we've found with people with mobility and dexterity impairments is that walking even these short to medium distances of 500 meters to 2 or 3 kilometers, and then also walking down towards the stream or the riverbank, those aspects can be really hard if you've got a mobility impairment. So this unit really creates a walking assist. So there's a motorized walk assist and also an electric pump for water pumping water from the source into the transport tanks on the cart itself, and then also from the tanks into whatever location that water will be pumped to once you're back at the house or the farm. So inside of the similar theme of accessibility, we also work with one of our partners, Light for the World, to look at a project that focuses on how to give wheelchair users in rural Cambodia better access to independent transport. So in the bottom right there, you can see one of our collaborators, Sraimom. So Sraimom is an administrator at our one of our partner NGOs, and she's a wheelchair user. And in the past, she's really relied a lot on local tuk-tuks and local motorcycle drivers to take her to and from her house. And our partner was really looking for a way to give her independent transport, a way that she could not have to wait until 6 or 7 p.m. after work to get picked up by a tuk-tuk, and wouldn't have to pay $30 a month for tuk-tuk costs, and could actually go to the markets, go to the pagoda with her family, and really feel quite valued in her community. So they came up with the design on the bottom right with no engineering input, and it's a really fantastic design as a proof of concept. And now we're working with them to refine the cost, the weight, safety aspects, usability, aesthetic. We're really working on how we can turn this great concept into something that could be scalable and really have impact across the thousands of wheelchair users in Cambodia and around the Southeast Asian region. One of the interesting emerging projects we have right now is around how we actually undertake monitoring and evaluation of our technologies, given the current COVID climate where we can't be in community all of the time. And so with one of our volunteers, Angus, we're actually scoping an interesting project that could use GPS modules, Bluetooth or Zigbee with 360 cameras, and how we can actually put these standalone units onto some of our transport technologies, onto the accessible Moto or the water pump cart, and use this as a monitoring and evaluation tool for learning as much as we can about those projects and as much as we can about how those technologies are actually being used. And then maybe combining that with VR or even just a desktop-based application that allows us to really learn about the nuances of how an individual actually pumps water when they're taking this motorized unit. Are they even using the motor? Are they just using the cart and loving the cart, but the pump is no good? This is going to give us some really nice insights as we take this project forward. And then finally, before I throw back to Sam, one more project that sits within my portfolio at the moment sits adjacent to the disability and mobility space, really more in the medical healthcare space, is the Birth Watch. So this project is based in rural Myanmar, really linked to a couple of NGOs there, initiated through MSF, Doctors Without Borders, but now sitting within an NGO called the Centre for Social Integrity. And this is really a project aimed at supporting traditional birth attendants. So local birth attendants, kind of lower skilled than a midwife, but still highly valued in the community, supporting them to actually detect issues or challenges during labour and during birth and postpartum that may require the patient to actually be transferred to a medical centre. And so this is a way of keeping track of really important time periods through stage 1, 2, and 3 of a pregnancy and a birth, with the intention that identifying these time periods will actually allow traditional birth attendants to refer patients to the appropriate facility in a more timely fashion, and then reduce some of the negative health outcomes of delayed referral. One of the challenges with this project is that quite often traditional birth attendants are not skilled in reading numbers and calculating times. So how we can actually create a product that links to a more visual, more intuitive timing system. And then also going forward, how we can use telecommunication technologies to actually help with the triaging process once it's identified that a referral is required. So those are the projects that currently sit within my kind of Southeast Asian portfolio. I'll throw over to Sam now to chat about one of our engineering on country projects as well.
Yeah, another thing that's been really, really exciting to see as this space has evolved is the collaboration between various parts of EWB. And this project that we're working on in partnership with the Centre for Appropriate Technology has a really interesting origin story. It was actually scoped, or the opportunity was identified when the EWB Challenge, which many of you are familiar with, as a curriculum integrated university program, was scoped with the Centre for Appropriate Technology last year. And it was not just scoped, or that process was not just looking at scoping opportunities to present real world contexts for the use in education, but it was also scoped with our community programs team and in particular with our NGO on Country team. And so a number of the projects that students were able to engage with and are engaging with right now have also been packaged up into real projects that we as an organisation are looking at taking forward. One such project is looking at the design of a portable renewable energy system. And this came out of an interesting set of needs and opportunities with the Centre for Appropriate Technology around the barriers or some of the inhibiting factors to enable communities up in Cape York and Cape Melville to access country and to be able to live sustainably on country when they wanted to. And that some of the infrastructure costs of permanent solutions, such as fixed renewable energy solutions or solar systems, were prohibitively expensive. And yet the services that they provide for lighting or refrigeration, ventilation, were really important for people to be able to spend time on country for extended periods of time. And so what they were looking at is a way in which we could provide and package up an energy system that could be taken onto country when people want to be on country, and then taken off again, either for repair or for maintenance, or to give to another group of people to take onto a different area of land. And so it's looking at reducing cost barriers, but also helping communities transition away from the use of generators into more renewable energy power systems. So this project is currently kind of moving through the conceptual design phase. And another really exciting aspect of this project, which you can see some CAD mock-ups of how the solar system or the solar panels can fold out of your standard size box trailer, is that although Andy and I are working on a lot of the mechanical engineering design work, the electrical system has actually been designed through volunteer support that Shenuka has been working with to mobilize that support in order to provide technical capability to us. And Andy and I actually had the first meeting that brought together the electrical design that Glenn Anderson's been leading, and we brought that together with the mechanical engineering design work that we've been doing. And it was a fantastic example of just how much value volunteers can add to a project when they're able to access those opportunities and that they have the time and skills to contribute.
Perfect. I think that is the end of our little flyby. Shall I throw it back to you, Tracy?
Yeah, I think it'd be really valuable just to do a little bit of a recap and take a bit of a breath. That was a lot of information. Thank you so much, Sam and Andy, for sharing all of that work that you're up to at the moment and giving us that that flyover of tech development at EWB. So let's just try and process that for a second. So we've got this sort of newly formed and newly consolidated technology development process at EWB, and we'd love for all of you to get involved. So we're working on these projects that Sam and Andy have just given you sort of a brief taster for, and they focus around the Asia Pacific and also on country in Australia. Andy, you've spent some time in Cambodia. I'd love to just sort of take a step back for a second and maybe even if you could just give us a bit of a day in the life to give us more of an idea of maybe how some of these designs sprouted and sort of came about and what it was like actually developing and working on these projects.
Yeah, sure thing. So my time in Cambodia kind of started back in 2016. So I did some of my postgrad studies were based in Cambodia as well, and then early in 2019 I moved across full time. So what that was really like, I was based in Phnom Penh, and our office is in Phnom Penh. A lot of our partners are there. Pretty much all of the project work that I was doing was actually based out in a couple of different provinces. So we were working a lot out of the Porsat province and township with a local partner called DDSP, Disability Development Services Porsat. And we were collaborating on the Agrilab and also the accessible Moto. And so there was a lot of time spent up there, about a week a month. So that was a pretty interesting experience working up in Porsat. So we stayed at a local hotel that's actually very lovely. Sam's had the pleasure of visiting as well. And DDSP have an inclusive training centre, which is this really beautiful kind of two room but relatively large training centre out in the middle of a bunch of rice fields. And so we would kind of about a 25-minute walk or a 10-minute tuk-tuk out to work out of that training centre. And that was working with a range of community members during our Agrilab program. So we worked with 2 different communities of about 30 people in each group, and also with the staff at DDSP. So DDSP have a small mechanics workshop. So we made like great friends with the Moto mechanic teacher there, crew, who's been supporting all of our projects now, and he just keeps coming up with awesome new ideas for how to use electric drive in all these different ways. Also working with participants like Mr. Jung. So if I flick through to, am I still sharing my screen or am I not?
You're not at the moment, but you can share.
Cool, let me just share that back again. So yeah, working with Mr. Jung was really great as well. So he is the gentleman in the red shirt riding on his VPAN. And this design was really his design. We had been developing a different version of this, which was a bit more horizontally mounted, and we were trying to figure out all these complex ways of getting the turning to work and getting it to be nice and smooth and usable. And we ended up leaving some prototypes with him in the community for about a month. And when we came back, he just had made this. We didn't know anything about using a bike frame or using an existing cart, and he kind of just pieced it all together and kind of strolled into workshop number 3 looking super proud with this like cool mechanical solution that he had come up with on site. And so that was really cool. And then it was really up to us to just support that design and refine it, ensure it was safe, ensure it was going to be reliable over time. And so there was heaps of that kind of back and forth, just identifying all these local innovators, and then just supporting them to deliver on what they thought was the right option, and then really being critical of what we learned through that process, and then working with them to input that back into the design process. And some of that was hard. Some of that was like massive days and 38 degrees and 90% humidity. And sometimes it was super easy, like a nice 20-degree day, sitting there eating like delicious like Khmer food and drinking like a sugarcane juice and just like spinning yarns. So it really differed depending on the day and the project.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing. It's so nice to help everyone sort of connect in with the project in that sort of meaningful way, and those personal stories really speak to that. Is there something that sort of came out of working so closely with community, maybe a time where you had one of those true like aha moments? I never would have thought of that, or we never would have designed it in that way had I not have been here with this community right now.
I think the accessible Moto has been a really awesome learning curve for myself. So the accessible Moto, just to remind everyone, looks a bit like this. So the process of getting to, furthering this design has been really interesting. So the bottom right-hand corner, that accessible Moto is based in Porsat in Cambodia. In the top right-hand corner, that's based in Yogyakarta with another one of our partners. And the one on the left is just a quick mock-up of a co-designed style working with Stremom and with Lukru, the Moto mechanic. And it was really interesting contrasting the different things that are actually important about a design. So when I started this project, I was kind of thinking, all right, let's make it safe, let's make it as nice and cheap and light, and let's really focus on really refining this design. And that kind of led us to maybe thinking about the design in the top right-hand corner. It's a much cheaper, lower to the ground, lighter design. But then when we sat down and chatted with Stremom, one of our collaborators, and she's in the bottom right-hand corner, the design with the sidecars doesn't satisfy what she really, really wants. What she wants is the ability to take passengers with her, because as soon as she got this current accessible Moto, she started giving people in her village a lift places. They'd come and ask her, hey, can you give me a lift to the shops, or can you do this? And all of a sudden she went from constantly relying on local tuk-tuk drivers and family members to being like one of the it people in her community and everyone wants to go for a ride on her Moto. And I've ridden in the back of it. It's very comfy. There's a fold down seat. And that just that spark in her eye is really the whole point. So just giving independent transport is one thing, but then really satisfying that specific need, that specific aspiration, all of a sudden her face goes from being somewhat happy that this has been achieved to all of a sudden just glowing with the idea that she's the cool person in the community now. And I think recognizing the importance of those kind of sparks is really important, and not just satisfying that core tech, requirement, and really linking in with the user to make sure that that they're loving it and that it's changing their life.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, you've spoken so much already about how important this sort of work is, and the aspect of building relationships and leveraging on relationships and building partnerships is so core to EWB's work. Is there a particular project that speaks to this leveraging of relationships and partnerships that you could tell us more about?
Yeah, I wonder, Sam, do you want to give a bit more detail about the solar project, or shall I chat about Earthwatch? What do you think would be?
Yeah, interesting one. I was actually, my head went to kind of the leveraging of relationships and I guess unique contributions. My head actually went down a sort of a continuation of the path that we were on, where you look at the value and the unique skills that DDSP, that Light for the World, and EWB bring when you put them all together is really, I think, quite remarkable. In everything from an advocacy perspective, or for want of a better word, but working with governments to look at diversity and inclusion more broadly, to look at systematic change within that space, through to a local organisation working with people with disabilities to engage them not only in the design and development of technologies, but creating a sort of a central hub to bring people together to share and to build their knowledge, and to be, I guess, positioning themselves to be creating their own solutions to overcoming the challenges that they're identifying. And I think that really actually speaks to a couple of the questions that have been raised around, the fact that some of these designs are quite custom, and they really have been designed and developed based on the specific needs or opportunities that the communities have identified. But what's, I think, quite remarkable when you add in the likes of DDSP and the Mechanics Training Centre, which is looking to expand in the future, is that because the community have been involved throughout the process, they've got an inherent knowledge of these designs because a lot of the designs have come from them. When you look at the likes of LaCrue as not only a motor mechanic, but a trainer, the intention of these projects is that the manufacturing and the implementation will be embedded within the communities themselves. And I think that's only possible because, EWB has been really fortunate to find its unique value add in this piece through facilitating and supporting participatory design processes and adding technical knowledge around some of the solutions that have been designed and developed. But the ecosystem that sits within the partners of Light for the World and DDSP is really what will enable these solutions as they progress to have a sustainable future and to be able to sort of contribute to the impact that they show potential in at the moment.
And I guess even building on that, the exciting future of this project is that we're also looking at what an electric version could actually look like. So we've been talking a lot with Agrilab, one of the big kind of renewable and energy NGOs in Cambodia, to figure out what would actually be needed over time for, an electric version of this to actually work and be sustainable in rural Cambodia.
Yeah, and I think that also, Andy, just to jump on the back of that, another really interesting and unique value or contributor that can be leveraged is an individual within this project again, Mr. Young, who runs a business which is the charging of household batteries or car batteries that are used for household power supply. And so even within this project, sometimes, when we were discussing it, it seemed like quite a significant extension of technology, maybe moving from internal combustion engines around motos and tractors towards an electric drive unit, until you start to realize that there's a huge amount of knowledge and experience around the recharge and distribution of battery powered systems sitting within that community through someone like Mr. Young. And again, there's another, that wasn't the reason he was engaging in this project, but it's something that he can contribute to the space and the potential viability of some of these projects in the future.
Oh, where do I sign up? Oh.
That
is a fantastic question.
So many interesting projects and so many interesting stories and personal stories. I'd be interested to hear from you both, Sam and Andy. Like, where does the core motivation for you come from in doing this work and working on these projects?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess for me, it's kind of the overlap of three factors. I mean, one is very clearly my love of creating stuff and tinkering and being an engineer, and the excitement that brings every day. And secondly is this kind of growing space anyway in Cambodia, and the work that I've been doing around independent transport and disability inclusion more broadly in society, and really recognizing that need and the work that I was doing with the partners that we were working with. And finally, that there's this huge gap in that sector, and how to actually create tangible things that can have impact in the disability and mobility space in Cambodia specifically. To go past running disability inclusion trainings into communities and into companies, to actually empowering people with disability to create their own stuff and not rely on waiting for a trickle down from a government policy to slowly make its way into the manufacturing sector to create cool stuff. Let's just create it from the ground up. And I think it was those kind of overlaps that excited me when I first joined EWB over a year ago. And it's the same motivation now that we're expanding into some other areas of need that we can see in the renewables and in the medical space, that have that same overlap between that real need inside of that sector for technology support and also that love of creating and tinkering. So I think that's what led me here. Sam?
I think what led me to broadly wanting to engage in kind of appropriate technology development is, or started off with, I guess, a recognition of the position of privilege that I come from, and the opportunities that I've been afforded to build skills and experience in engineering, and in other facets of both professional and personal life, and reaching, I guess, a bit of a fork in the road, if you want, which really looked at, I guess, asking myself the question, how can I best use the skills and expertise that I have to try and make the most positive change or contribute positively to society in some form or another. And I think that naturally, with some of my natural tendencies, similar to Andy, in areas where I get a lot of enjoyment from, in tinkering, in creating, in thinking creatively around solutions, led me into this space. But the particular area that we work, where the participatory nature of the work that we do and the focus on making sure that what we work on is community identified and that we engage with communities and individuals as much as possible through that process, is just such a phenomenal opportunity to learn in ways that you very rarely realize you're going to learn at the onset. And I think the way that EWB is evolving in its vision of what role technology plays, particularly when you look at the enabling environments that can see some of these solutions not only implemented at a small localized scale, but then scaled sustainably. I believe it's in that mix that we as an organization, and hopefully myself as an individual, can contribute to creating impactful and long-lasting change. And I think when you bring those bits together, it's quite a complicated mix, but it's really exciting in the potential that it can achieve. And I think the fact that every single situation is different, and even looking at the implementation of a particular type of solution, whether it be linked to mobility or otherwise, as soon as you change context, as soon as you change the people who are involved, there is an inherent amount of complexity and interest in those projects just because of the number of variables that change. And that, for me, in the last sort of, I don't know, 8 to 10 years that I've engaged in this space, I guess, has been a continual injection of interest, and yeah, that's something that really, I guess, keeps me motivated.
Yeah, and I really think that's probably something a lot of people on the call or on the webinar are probably resonating with at the moment, wanting to have impact with the skills that you have and in the interest areas that you have. And I think that might be a nice way to feed into Shenuka's piece, which is going to talk a bit more about how we actually are going to bring volunteers into these projects and the role that they might play. So Shenuka, would you like to tell us a bit more about that?
Thanks, Trixie. Yes, I'd love to sort of open up the, I guess, share a bit of knowledge with everyone on how you can get involved in this space. Saw a few questions going up in the chat space as well. A few keen participants wanting to know how they can get involved after seeing some of these projects through the flyover. And hopefully I also want to sort of acknowledge what you saw today is just the tip of the iceberg. Sam and Andy have been doing quite a bit of work. They've created some amazing infrastructure for us as volunteers to get involved in this space. And I'll run through some of that in this PowerPoint as well. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll have a bit of an idea of how you can get involved and really contribute to some of these amazing projects that have been created. I thought I'll start with a bit of an overview of what mobilisation is. This is the theory of change within EWB Australia for our next 10-year strategy. And essentially, the idea is that we have educated engineers. We have engineers and technicians who are motivated. And then we've got this pillar where we are ready to act. And that's where mobilisation comes in. It's that pillar of letting us act into these projects, contribute into these projects so that we can create, we can have an impact. And in terms of the pillars, I think Sam mentioned these earlier. We've got our technology that's been developed and scaled so that we can impact communities that way. Then we have our enabling environments where we work in these developing countries to create those systems, work with government, and both are equally sort of important in this sort of change that we're trying to make. And you'll have opportunities to volunteer in both those spheres. And finally, what that leads to is us creating this paradigm shift in the long run within the engineering sector. So I just want to sort of give that visual in terms of mobilization. That's really the pillar for us to start acting into these branches within EWB Australia. So I've been pondering on this question for a while, so I thought I'll sort of, and I'm sure a lot of you are still a bit curious as to what mobilization is as well. Essentially, what mobilization is you and I. So all of you on this call, you are mobilization. This is our time to act, and mobilization is the pillar and the framework that gives you the opportunity to get involved in these amazing projects so we can make an impact ourselves. So I really encourage all of us through these opportunities, these projects that you've seen, through the curiosity you have, let's use this opportunity to, I guess, learn and grow both in our personal and professional capabilities by getting involved in these projects. There was a question earlier that said, do I need to be a professional? Do I need to be highly skilled to start working on these projects? And the answer is everyone's in this learning journey. Let's get involved. We've got some amazing resources that I'll run you through that guide you through some of these human-centered design processes. Even if you are highly skilled and highly professional, there will still be a learning curve. So we encourage volunteers of all skill levels to get involved, and the capacity that you will sort of take part in these projects might differ depending on the skill levels, but now is the time to get involved, and you've got resources to help you learn and grow as you do. I thought I'll show you some of the other projects that we've been sort of working on so far. So this is a page that we've created to host all of our existing projects. And some of these projects here, volunteer teams as we speak are working on. And there are a couple of opportunities here that you can get involved with us as well. And this is a journey. So these projects, as you get involved, will build your own capacity, will give you an understanding into the technology development approach, and it'll really sort of help you get involved in projects at a deeper capacity as we progress. So I just wanted to point out that a lot of these projects are happening at the moment, and there is projects that you can get involved. So it's a matter of us, I guess. I'll show you some of those places where you can find the projects and the opportunities to sign up as well. This one here, Open Mobilisation Challenge, this is one of our projects that we've opened up. You can sign up to this project, and I'll show you the link, and we'll email you the link to that sign up as well. It's a project involving the design of a vehicle washdown facility, and it's to support the Indigenous communities in far north Queensland. And the spread of weed is seen as a challenge to the preservation of biodiversity on country, and the challenge was created around that. And within that EWB Challenge webpage, you'll see details of the project itself, and it'll guide you through that process in terms of how you can get involved, and details on the project itself. That project is for our volunteers to help support the Centre for Appropriate Technology and the Indigenous communities. It's for you to get involved, and it's also a great opportunity for you to collaborate with other like-minded EWB volunteers in an online environment. In terms of where you find these opportunities, the best place is the EWB dashboard. You can visit it at www.dashboard.ewb.org.au. You also find these opportunities posted within the EWB website under Volunteers Get Involved. All the current mobilisation opportunities are listed there, and I encourage us all at the end of this call, at the end of this webinar, to sort of really have a look, dig in, try and understand some of these projects and get involved. There's no better time to get involved than right now. Within the website, this is how the opportunities will be posted. Under open volunteering opportunities, you'll see some of those key projects that I've shown you, and the sign up links will be included within it. In terms of, we've also got an EWB Australia chapter network that's based across each of the chapters. And if you are an existing regional chapter member, just wanted to flag that we will also be creating an expression of interest within each of the regional chapters going forward. So that's a great way, if you're part of an EWB chapter, for you to put your name down to be notified of opportunities that come up in the future. And if you're not, I would also highly recommend having a look at joining one of those chapters if you do have the time and capacity. I'd also like to acknowledge Danielle Kirby, who's been our National Mobilisation Facilitator. She's done some amazing work to get us to the stage where we are at. And you can see the power of volunteers and what we can sort of impact in terms of these frameworks and these systems that we've created for you to then be able to take part in these projects. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our national office staff. There's a lot more staff than it's on page here, but in terms of some of these existing opportunities that are out for you to take part in, I just wanted to highlight some of the key figures who've sort of made that happen. And this is through work that's gone in through, I guess, the preliminary design work to sort of scoping the projects to now sort of actively engaging in them. Finally, if you come across any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at mobilisation@ewb.org.au. We'll also send you an email at the end of this session highlighting some of those links for you to sign up to projects directly, and also the details of the email to reach me. That's pretty much it from me.
Great. Thanks so much, Shenuka, for adding that second piece. I hope that everyone on the call sort of has a bit more of a understanding on what technology development actually means and what that project area is at EWB Australia. So thanks so much to Sam and Andy for giving us that overview and also the project flyover as well. Shenuka, that second piece that you've added was so vital in terms of how we actually are going to get our volunteers, people on this webinar involved in our projects and involved at EWB. But I think that's it from us. So thank you again for attending, and we hope to hear from you soon, and you'll certainly hear from us soon with the email that's going to go out. Thanks so much. Speak to you soon.